Okay, everyone, I am librarian Jennifer. I am the children's librarian at Burlington Public Library. As I said before, we are recording this, so please make sure to change your name, turn off your camera if you are not comfortable with that. Today, I'm really excited because we have Kim Nelson from the Skagit Audubon Society. She is going to teach us all about bird watching and local birds in Skagit County. What's really cool is just last night, we had it approved that every student in the Burlington Edison School District can now sign up for a full library card. No matter where you live, you don't have to pay for it. You can now sign up to check out stuff, which is super awesome because the Audubon Society gave us these really neat take-home kits, which are cool because you can get, let me stop sharing my screen for a minute. You can get these really cool patches, and there's some maps and pencils and information on how to do some bird watching at home and ways to build binoculars yourselves. But if you have a library card, which now all of you can sign up for, you can check out our borrow kit, which has these super awesome heavy duty binoculars. It has a whole bunch of books and maps and all sorts of other things. So that way you can actually go out with your grown-ups, your siblings, whoever you want, and do some hardcore bird watching out in nature. So today, Miss Kim is going to tell us all about how to get started with that and some very cool information about local birds and how we can help their habitats and their environment. Before I hand it off to Miss Nelson, I just want to let everybody know, if you didn't hear a second ago, every student in the Burlington Edison School District can now get a free library card. So visit our website so you can sign up for that. And we are also doing a pumpkin carving contest. So if you guys are really good at carving pumpkins that are inspired by your favorite books or movies, look at our website and see how to enter that contest. I think you have to enter by like next Thursday, but I'm not positive on that. So check that out. All right, I am going to hand it over to Miss Nelson. If I can find her back in my list.
I'll talk and maybe I'll go up to the top.
There you go, thank you.
All right, thank you guys for having me. I'm really happy to be here and so lucky that Burlington Library is helping us out. So thanks, Jennifer, for providing those kits for everybody. I'm gonna start sharing my screen now. Can you guys see that okay? All right, so let's get started. So like I said, I'm Kim Nelson and I'm from Skagit Audubon Society. And if you haven't heard of us before, we're an organization that is dedicated to protecting birds and their habitat, as well as connecting people to nature, including students, young people, old people, everyone from all sorts of backgrounds. And so first off, I want you all to just take a moment to think about what makes a bird a bird. What makes them different from other types of animals? And one thing that comes to mind is wings, right? So wings help birds fly. And as you can see, there's lots of different shapes and sizes and colors to these wings. And on those wings are feathers. And as you can see, there's lots of different shapes and sizes and patterns and colors on these wings. Sometimes it really helps them camouflage. Sometimes it helps them fly faster and stronger. And then birds also lay eggs, although there are other animals that do lay eggs, right? Like reptiles and amphibians. But as you can see, again, there's just a huge variety of eggs, different colors and shapes and patterns. And then lastly, birds have beaks, right? So instead of having teeth, they have beaks. And there's so many different types. You have cone-like beaks that help them eat seeds and grains. And then you have sharp pointy beaks that you find on raptors, also known as birds of prey or scavengers, that helps them bite down into meat. And you can also have chisel-like beaks, so there's just a huge variety. So moving on, You guys are so lucky to be living here in Skagit Valley because there's so many different types of birds that live here. And so, oops, sorry, going back. People flock from all over the country, pun intended, to see all these different types of birds. And one of which is this bird here, the bald eagle. I'm sure you're all very familiar with it. As you can see, they have that big, powerful bill and those big, powerful feet with those big, powerful talons. And that helps them grab onto prey. So they eat a variety of different types of things, including small mammals, waterfowl. They'll even eat dead things. So that makes them a type of scavenger. And as you go around in Skagit Valley, you'll probably end up seeing large nests, such as this one. And if you see a nest like this, you'll know it's been around for a long time. These eagles will keep bringing more and more sticks to their nest each year. And the cool fact about bald eagles is that they have, we have a really special bird that lives here in Skagit Valley that instead of having a dark brown body, it actually is gray. And so keep an eye out for it and maybe you'll get lucky enough to see it. We have tons and tons of eagles here, but it wasn't always like that. Back in the 19, sorry, I'm gonna stop for a second. Okay, great. All right, let's move on. Sorry so much, guys.
Sorry, guys.
Distraction. So like I was saying, bald eagles used to be, we used to have a lot of them, and then their population really declined back in the 1900s. And that was due to a pesticide called DDT that people were using to kill off types of bugs like mosquitoes and ones that were causing crop damage. And fortunately, that once they figured out that the DDT was causing the bald eagle eggshells to become so thin that they would crack under the pressure of the parents as they were incubating the eggs, they banned it. And so eagles went from being extremely endangered, almost extinct, to being back to not being threatened at all by DDT. But unfortunately, there still is some types of threats that are could affect bald eagles, and one of which is lead poisoning. So hunters that go out and shoot using lead bullets, and those bullets break up into fragments and they get inside those bodies. If they leave behind things that they've hunted and it has those fragments of bullets, the eagles can digest that when they eat into the carcass, and they can get really sick and unfortunately die. So it's really important that hunters not use lead bullets, instead use copper bullets. So moving on, most people up here are Seattle Seahawk fans, right? But what exactly is a Seahawk? People might look at that beak on the logo and they might think, oh, it looks a lot like that eagle beak. So most people think of eagles, but I personally think of this bird here, and that's the osprey. And as you can see, it's much more hawk-like in its features. It has a much smaller bill, and mostly the reason I think of them as the Seahawk is because they can be found only by bodies of water. Whereas eagles you'll see out in fields and they eat a lot of different types of things. Seahawks only eat fish. And so they're really great at fishing. So a cool fact about them is that once they are flying and they spot a fish, you'll see them fold up their wings and just dive down really fast, and their legs stretched out. And then they have their feet that they can rotate their toes in and out. And then they also have spines on the bottom of their feet, and that helps them grip onto slippery fish. And they're so good at fishing that they can even catch 2 fish at once, which is really incredible. So they also face some threats, one of which is that because they eat fish, they can get tangled up in leftover fishing line. And as you can see on this nest, there's some trash there, right? So these birds will sometimes bring trash to their nest as material, and they'll get tangled up inside of it. So our next bird here is the peregrine falcon. And as you can see, it has these long pointy wings and a very sleek body. And peregrine falcons are really cool because they're actually the fastest animal on the planet. They've been clocked in at flying over 200 miles per hour. Cheetahs can only run as fast as 61 miles per hour, and they're the fastest mammal. So these guys are incredibly fast. They usually hunt birds. So they'll see them going after flocks of like starlings and shorebirds. And then next we have the American kestrel. This bird is similar to a peregrine falcon in that it's a falcon, but it's much smaller and it's not nearly as fast. They're more of a sit and wait predator, so you'll see them sitting on posts or on power lines along roads, and they really like open grasslands and agricultural fields to hunt. And sometimes you'll see them just flying just in place. They're just hovering there, flapping their wings, and it's called kiting when they do that. And then they'll just kind of flutter down fast to grab their prey, which usually could be small rodents or lizards. But something that makes them different from other types of birds of prey is that they eat bugs. So this bird here has a dragonfly. They also will eat grasshoppers. So they're pretty cool. And the cool fact about them is that unlike other birds of prey, there's a difference between the males and the females. Usually they look the same. Females are just a little bit bigger. But here you can see that the male has that dark grayish blue coloration on its back. So if you see that, you'll be like, okay, that's a boy kestrel. And these birds are unfortunately in decline across their entire range in North America. And one of the reasons why is because since they eat bugs, if people are using harmful insecticides that cause the insects to die, if the bird eats those, it can also become poisoned. And then another reason is that, I don't know if you can spot the kestrel in this picture, but it's in this tiny little hole right here. And so these guys are unlike other falcons in that instead of nesting on ledges, they nest in cavities in trees. And because they like to hunt in these open grasslands, there's not a lot of trees available. They also don't build their own cavities. They rely on other birds, such as woodpeckers, to carve out those holes. So without having enough nest sites, that's also caused their population to decline. But luckily, they will happily nest inside the nest box if one is provided for them. So there's a big initiative across the country for people to be putting up nest boxes in fields for them to nest in. So you keep an eye out for those. So our next bird that you'll also see flying around the grasslands and agricultural fields, as well as in marshlands, is the short-eared owl. And these guys are so special because unlike other types of owls, they actually hunt during the day. And like other owls, they have that silent flight, right? So they have really soft feathers. So when you see one flying during the day and it's just fluttering around, it's almost like, it looks like a moth. Like it's just the coolest sight ever. And so they like to hunt kind of low, and they're looking for small rodents called voles. And they also have really great hearing and big, powerful talons to grab up to those voles. And the cool fact about them is that unlike other types of owls, these guys will actually nest on the ground. Not the cutest chicks, I have to say. And a threat that these birds face, as well as all other owls and birds of prey, as well as other carnivores, is rat poisoning. So similar to the insecticides, certain types of rat poison called rodenticides can kill these animals. So if the rat is poisoned, then the predator comes down and eats that poisoned rat, those toxins build up and it can make them very sick, and they can unfortunately die from that. So it's better just to let predators do their own thing. Our next bird of prey and our last bird of prey is the turkey vulture, who I'm sure you guys have seen before. They are a type of scavenger, so they eat dead things. And the cool fact about them is that they don't have feathers on their head, and that helps them get into that those nasty little rotten carcasses and not get their feathers all gunked up. Whoops, sorry, I skipped one. But you'll see them during the summertime in these large flocks like this. They're called kettles, so they're just flying around in circles. And turkey vultures fly with their wings up in a V shape, and they teeter. They kind of are off balance when they fly. So if you see a bird doing that, you'll know that that's a turkey vulture. And the threat that they face is that because they hunt in groups looking for dead things, and because they eat dead things that might have toxins in them, such as pesticides or lead bullet fragments, they can all become sick at once if they ingest that poisoned animal. And so that affects not just turkey vultures, but all vultures across the world. So moving away from birds of prey, we now have a great blue heron, who I'm sure you guys have seen them before. They have those long toes and long legs, long body, long beak, long neck, like everything about them is just long and elegant. And they're very slow when they move. You often just see them standing in one place and they just are stalking their prey. So you'll see them in water, they'll be waiting, they see a fish and then they just lunge down and they grab it up. And you'll also see them out in fields where they're hunting mostly gophers. So they'll just stand outside of a gopher hole and just wait until it finally pops its head and then they'll grab it. And the cool fact about great blue herons is that these birds they'll nest in these colonies, and Skagit Valley is actually home to one of the largest nesting colonies in the United States. There's over 800 pairs that nest all together at March Point, just outside of Anacortes. So that's really rare. It's the second largest nesting colony on the West Coast. And they're really sensitive to disturbance. So it's important that we protect this area because there's really not many places like this in the rest of the US. So our next bird is the trumpeter swan, this big, white, majestic bird that I'm sure you guys have seen plenty of times out in the fields. You know, they like to eat vegetation. They like to eat leftover crops like corn and potatoes. They'll also be out in the water, dipping their heads down, looking for aquatic vegetation to eat. And the cool fact about trumpeter swans is that they're the heaviest flying bird in all of North America. These birds can weigh as much as 30 pounds, which is just crazy big. They also have a wingspan as long as 8 feet long. Really impressive. And similar to bald eagles, these birds are also very susceptible to lead poisoning. It's not so much the lead bullets, but people that use lead fishing tackle when they go out fishing and they leave that behind. These birds just eat just a little bit of that and they get extremely sick. So just like the lead bullets, it's better not to use lead fishing tackle. So next we have a similar looking bird, is the snow goose. And snow geese, as you can see, are smaller than swans. They have a shorter neck. Their beak and their feet are more of this orangey pink instead of black, and they also have black tips on their wings. But you see them in similar areas as the swans because they eat similar things. And the cool fact about them is that we have thousands upon thousands of them that come down here to spend the winter. So typically they're up in the Arctic where they're nesting in northeast Russia. And then they come down here, they travel 3,000 miles south and spend the winter here in the Skagit Valley, eating up all the leftover crops and yummy things. So right now, this week, I've just been seeing and hearing tons of them flying in. So keep an eye out for that. So moving away from waterfowl, we're now going to talk about some different songbirds, and one of which is the American robin, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with. They're very common, and they have that bright red breast. And you'll see them on the ground. They're looking for grubs like worms and bugs. They'll also be in trees, eating up fruit. They'll come to your bird feeders. They eat a big variety of things. And the cool fact about them is that they lay these really pretty blue eggs. So if you see eggshells on the ground that are this color, you'll know that that came from the American robin. And they also face several threats, one of which is that because they nest in trees, if people trim their trees during the spring and summer when they're nesting, they could knock down their nests. So it's better to trim your vegetation during the fall and winter. And because they hang out near houses, they can also end up colliding with windows. They don't see glass the way that we see it. And so they'll see vegetation in the window and they get confused and they'll try to fly to that vegetation and then end up hitting the glass. And that affects more than just robins, it affects all songbirds and also some different types of birds of prey, woodpeckers, all sorts of things. And it can kill up to 1 billion birds in the US each year. So windows are a very serious issue. An even more serious issue is outdoor cats, which can kill up to 3 billion birds in the US each year. So outdoor cats are a big issue, and because you know, they're just outside houses and robins are there, they'll come down and attack them on the ground when they're out foraging. So our next bird is the American goldfinch. As you can see, it has that cone-like bill, which helps them eat seeds. And they really like the seeds of the thistle plant. That's their favorite. The male is the bright yellow one, and the female is the duller olive color. And the cool fact about these birds is that they're the official state bird of Washington State. Pretty cool. And one threat that they face is a disease called conjunctivitis, where their eyes become so swollen and red that they can become blind. And that is helped spread through dirty bird feeders. So they love to come down to bird feeders and eat up seeds that people provide. But if the feeders aren't cleaned on a regular basis, that disease can get spread to big flocks of them all at once. Our next bird is the northern flicker, which is a type of woodpecker. So you'll see them often at dead pieces of wood, pecking holes, looking for grubs. And as you can see here, they have a really long tongue. They can stick in and out of the hole to grab up those grubs. Pretty cool. And a cool fact about them is that they have red undersides on their wings and tail. So this is what you call a red-shafted northern flicker. And this is the type of flicker that you find on the west coast. But further east, they have the yellow-shafted flicker. And every now and then it's super rare, but you can find ones that have both yellow and red feathers. Really cool. And a threat that they face, as well as other types of woodpeckers, is that because they rely on dead wood to find their food, as well as to build their cavities to raise their young in, when people remove dead wood because they look at it as a hazard or because they want it to use for firewood, things like that, they lose that important nest sites and food sources. So our last bird is the Anna's hummingbird, who I'm sure you guys have seen. They're so small, so fast. These birds actually weigh less than a dime. That's how tiny they are. And this is a male because it has that pink throat. And then this would be like a juvenile or a female because it lacks that pink throat. And then you can see it has that long tubular-like bill, and then it has that long tongue that can flick in and out. And that helps them drink the nectar out of flowers. And you'll also see them at bird feeders. And a cool fact about hummingbirds is that they can flap their wings 80 times per second. Like just flap your arms. Like how often can you do that? Like I can do it in like 1 second, one flap. They do it 80 times per second. So it's crazy fast. And they're also the only bird that can fly backwards and upside down. Pretty cool. Another cool fact about Anna's hummingbirds is that they use spider webs and little pieces of leaves and lichen and moss to build their nests. So that makes their nests super well camouflaged. They're really hard to find. And then it also makes their nest stretchy so that when the chicks hatch out their eggs that are so tiny, like Tic Tac size, the nest expands as the chicks get bigger because of the stretchy spider webs. And these birds, because they go to bird feeders, if those feeders aren't cleaned on a regular basis, they can also get sick pretty easily. So it's important to keep your feeders clean. And then also people think that you need red dye sometimes to put into the sugar water to attract the birds, but they really don't need that. The red dye can actually be harmful to hummingbirds. So it's important to not use red dyes and just use plain sugar water. Okay, so we talked about a ton of different birds. They're super cool, but I want you all to just take a moment and think, what would happen if we didn't have these birds around? So when I think about birds, I think they're so beautiful, but then I also have so much to appreciate them for. In fact, we probably wouldn't even exist without birds. And one of those reasons is because birds provide really important services, one of which is seed dispersal, as well as pollination. So by them going around and eating fruit and spreading seeds, and then also hummingbirds and other birds going to flowers and spreading pollen, they're helping make more plants exist by reproduction. So if we didn't have them, we'd have less food to eat, we'd have less vegetation, less shade, less oxygen. So they're really important. And then another reason is because they provide really important pest control, right? So they're eating all the bugs and the rodents. So if we didn't have them, we'd like be up to our eyeballs. Pests, we'd have way less food to eat. So they're really important. And then lastly, birds like scavengers, like vultures, provide important waste management. So without them, we'd have lots of dead carcasses around, and those carcasses would have disease and harmful bacteria that would just keep building up in our environment. So if we didn't have them, we would be really sick. So we're so lucky. So now that we've talked about why birds are important, we should all think about how can we help protect birds. And I know we've already talked about a lot of these things, but I'll just kind of recap them here. One is we should keep our windows bird safe. So we can add string, we can add vinyl stickers, but just something to help the birds notice that glass is there. It's also important that we keep our bird feeders clean on a regular basis to help not spread disease. We should also avoid using harmful pesticides that can make the birds sick. We should avoid using lead bullets and lead fishing lines. If your family are hunters or fishermen, encourage them to use other types. We should also always clean up the environment, right? Trash is bad. Leftover fishing line, also really bad. And it helps protect not just birds, but other types of animals. And then one more is keeping cats inside, or if you want to keep them outside, keeping them in an enclosure, like a catio is what they call it. So that way they can't go out and kill birds and other small animals. You can also hang up nest boxes, and they come in a big variety of different sizes and types based on what bird is going to nest in them, but it's really great to provide that extra habitat for them. And then lastly, try not to trim your trees and other vegetation during that nesting season to help protect the nests. And there's a lot more that you can do, and there's so many birds that we did not talk about. So if you guys want to learn more, I definitely suggest checking out these additional websites: National Audubon Society, Skagit Audubon Society, that's us, allaboutbirds.org, and then the American Bird Conservancy, abc.org. So you can just learn everything you ever wanted to know. And okay, so that's it for my presentation. I cannot figure out how to stop sharing the screen though, which is weird.
You should have, let me see if I can do it for you. I have just opened up the chat. If you have a question for Miss Nelson about local birds or how we can protect their stuff, their habitats, how we can help them survive. If you have something other than hi, please put it in the chat. Remember, the chat is for questions to ask our Ms. Nelson, to ask our presenter. It's not just for saying hello to everyone. I'm sure everyone knows that you're happy to be here. Why isn't the dodo bird in here?
That's a good question. So dodo birds unfortunately are extinct, which is really sad. They haven't been around for a long time, but they were like a big auk-like bird, almost like a penguin. And unfortunately, people hunted them. They're like, oh, these are pretty tasty, and they like their eggs too. And they're overhunted to the point that they went extinct. And that's a really sad thing that can happen. And we learn from that. We learn that we need to help protect birds and help manage that by monitoring bird populations. And okay.
You want your cats to kill rodents, and there are duck hunting dogs. So is there a way that you can have cats that can deter rodents, but maybe can still protect the birds?
It's a hard balance to make. And there are certain organizations that definitely say, like, you know, it's okay to have outdoor cats. Audubon, we kind of feel it's better not to. But I understand, like, you know, you have to find that balance. So people can put things on their cats to help them deter birds, but typically like there's these like scrunchy collars with different colors on them that maybe rodents wouldn't pay as much attention to, but birds would. So maybe that would be helpful. But bells and things like that, the rodents are still going to catch on to. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't really recommend it, but I understand why people want to use it. It's just better to just let birds like owls and hawks and things that eat rodents do their job.
Let's see. I don't think I've ever seen a crow or a raven here in Skagit Valley. Is that true? Do we have crows and ravens in Skagit Valley?
We do.
I didn't mean to ravens.
It's a great question, Justin. I couldn't include everything. There's just so many birds in Skagit Valley, like so many. And crows and ravens are awesome. They are a type of corvid, so they're really, really smart. They can solve puzzles. I love them, but I did not include them just because there's just too many. Good question.
Does anybody else have a question for Ms. Nelson about bird watching in Skagit County?
I see some people with their hands raised. If you guys don't want to use the chat,
we have a parakeet. Oh, parakeets are fun.
They are. It's fun. But yeah, just put it in the chat if you have a question. Or I guess we can. They just keep holding up their hands. So, Alex, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, I saw you holding up your hand.
What are some popular places to watch birds in Skagit County? That's a great question.
It is a great question. Yeah. So we have different places that you can go birding, and I really recommend going to Burlington Public Library, getting those checkout kits. They're going to come with maps of where to go birding here in Skagit County. You can also go to the library and check out a state park pass, so you can go, because a lot of state parks are awesome places to go birding. So like Bayview State Park, Deception Pass State Park, but also just driving around these different farmlands in your area, you're going to see lots of cool stuff. So you don't have to pay to go to these places. Really anywhere, even your own yard. If you get bird feeders and if you have access to a pair of binoculars, you'll be amazed at how cool these birds are. Their colors, their behavior, there's so much to learn. They're endlessly fascinating. Were there any other questions in the chat?
I saw a question, how fast are hummingbirds and where can we find robins?
So robins are just kind of everywhere. Like if you just keep an eye out, you'll see them sometimes in flocks. They could be in your yard, they could be up in trees. They're just really could be anywhere. Sometimes in the forest, like they're super common. So just keep an eye out. Also, I don't have it available right now, but look up their call, like go on Google and look up American Robin song. It's a beautiful, beautiful melodic song. And if you then learn what their song sounds like, then you'll know that they're where they are. They typically sing throughout the winter into their nesting season, spring and summer. And then hummingbirds, I don't know speed-wise, but they are incredibly fast. I mean, they can just, like, it's really hard to stay track on one. Like you get them in your, you see them and you pull it up your binoculars and they're already gone. You're like, where did you go? Because they just like buzz away so fast. But when you get them in the light, they're just beautiful. So a really great way to see them is just hanging up a hummingbird feeder and getting to watch them.
What is the annual Christmas bird count?
Oh my gosh, how does somebody know about that? That is so great. So I put up those resources up there. If you go to National Audubon Society's website, you can learn everything there is to know about the Christmas bird count. But it was something that came about back in the early 1900s. People used to go out and hunt different birds like herons and egrets, things that had really elaborate feathers. And it was really popular for women to wear these feathers on their hats. Like it was super popular. And they actually hunted these birds so much that they were close to becoming extinct. And so a bunch of people decided, let's not go out and hunt birds, let's go spot birds. It was women that started the organization. They're like, let's count as many birds as possible during this time of year, each year, and see how those numbers can either increase or decrease. Let's start monitoring these bird populations. And so that became a really popular thing to do. And people realized, like, yeah, these birds are really in decline. Let's help protect them, and saw the numbers increase. And so each year since the early 1900s, people go out across North America and across the world, really. And during the month of December, and you have a certain type of area, like I forget how many miles it is, maybe 30 miles in circumference. And everybody goes out and counts as many birds as they can that day. And then they all record it and they report it. And so it's a great way to really see how bird populations are either increasing or decreasing. So I definitely participate in that. And we, totally take people that have never been birding before, including kids. And so if you're interested in doing that, definitely check out Skagit Audubon Society and let us know. Great question.
I think that's the last question we got. Thank you, Miss Nelson, for coming to talk to us. Kids, make sure you sign up for your brand new student card at the Burlington Library. You can do that on your laptop. You can do it on our website, or you can give us a call. Make sure to check out our new bird watching kits. And if you want, you can come pick up one of our take-home kits, and you get to keep this forever and ever. So thank you all for coming. Thank you so much, Miss Nelson. And make sure to check out the Skagit Audubon Society's website so you can get all sorts of great resources. Thank you all so much for coming, and we will see you guys again soon.